If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Good morning, and welcome to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Contact number to get in contact with the show is 513-9921. Let me repeat that, 513-453-9921. You can also Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. When you call the show, please press the number 1 button if you would like to speak with Mr. Fuller, and you will fall into another rotation, and according to how many callers we have on the line, you will be the next caller. If you Gmail me, I'm asking, please ma'am, please sir, I know that you have a lot to say, but because we are on radio, please do not write me a novel. Please don't do that, because it makes it very difficult for me to read it, and I don't want to leave out any significant parts that you may want emphasized. So I'm going to ask you to call in if it's going to be lengthy, because I can't do it. I want to do it, but I can't do it because of the restrictions of radio. So please, ma'am, please, sir, when you write that, proofread it or whatever you have to do, and just get your main point so that I can relay it to Mr. Fuller and your question can be read. Could you do that for me, ma'am? Could you do that for me, sir? I appreciate that. Okay, let's go on with the show. Brother Muko, I'm going to, they just changed it. I'm going to get to you, but I'm going to get this this Gmail out of the way. I asked this person to rewrite it and slim it down so that I could read it for radio edit. I'm going to allow this one to go through, but I would ask, please, ma'am, please, sir, do not send me a novel. This comes from Brother Jay. He says, first of all, good morning, Mr. Fuller. I am so sorry. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
All righty. All right. And how are you doing?
I am still learning.
Yes, sir. By the way, I did pick up your show on the Carl Nelson show that you do. The information was not on ProduceJustice.com, but eventually I will be able to get that. But I did get a chance to hear that and view or listen to some other shows that you had on there. Very, very good. So thank you for that information, and thank you for the caller that brought that up. Okay, this is from Brother Jay. It says, Mr. Fuller, just about everyone in this listening audience respects your contribution to humanity and black people specifically. We're grateful that you're still getting here, getting up early in the morning every Tuesday to offer your master class. However, my point to you was not that a system of white supremacy does not exist, because we all know that it does. That's an indisputable fact, and anyone who disagrees is clueless. There's no doubt a system that elevates and keeps those persons classified as white at the top and those classified as black at the bottom exist. I think you reacted emotionally to my VGQ with sarcasm, as if I was implying that those who practice white supremacy don't have a disproportionate amount of wealth, power, and resources on this planet. We know that black people, no matter where on the planet, don't have that level of influence. So we'd be a fool to suggest otherwise. What I'm saying is that there is no prior precedent to us being able to have small victories over factions of white supremacy, and it can be done on an even grander scale and and on a longer lasting level here in the present and future if we begin to implement aspects of your code book as well as other useful tools that have been given to us over the years by other counter-racist tacticians and black empowerment advocates. And while it is foolish to ever estimate the so-called white supremacist, I believe it is almost as bad for us to overestimate him as well. He's powerful, but he isn't a god. He doesn't come from a tribe of giant geniuses and mighty men and women. You seem to denigrate past black civilizations and current groups like the people of North Sentinel Island who've become successful in not being overtaken or influenced by white supremacy as a joke. How the white supremacists can take them out anytime they want to. True. But that's also very cynical and dismissive response to a people who have been successful in not being overtaken by colonialism for over 60,000 years. In conclusion, some of us black people are not content with any eternal victims of theirs. Thank you once again for taking time to relay my Gmail to Mr. Fuller. This is from Brother Jay. Mr. Fuller, what say you for that?
That comes under VGQ, Victims Guaranteed Qualification, which means, according to the code, any person who is non-white and or a victim of the system of white supremacy is fully qualified to say anything that he or she decides to say on his or her own about race, racism, which is white supremacy, in my opinion, and or counter-racism, which is being against racism. And anyone who's a victim of racism they have earned that qualification just by being victims. So it's not a matter of agreeing or disagreeing with what some other victim says or thinks or plans on doing or anything. Once that person considers him or herself victimized by racism and or considers him or herself non-white in the system of racism, who has been affected by it either directly or indirectly, is totally qualified, without asking anybody's permission about anything, to say whatever he or she chooses to say about race, racism, and counter-racism. And like just what the person put in his or her letter, I hope I didn't come across as sarcastic or anything like that, because I'm not qualified to be sarcastic about anything that a victim says. The victim speaks for him or herself, and I cannot agree. This is a part of the code. That's why we need a code. I can't agree with what the person is saying, including what the person is saying about the letter, and I cannot disagree. I'm totally disqualified from doing that. The person speaks to the world. They're not speaking to Neely Fuller. Neely Fuller is not a judge. He's not a criteria for anything. I want that to be understood by everybody on the planet and the known universe. I am not the criteria for anything, and particularly when it comes to anything about race, racism, or counter-racism. I'm just another voice from the prison yard. So it's not like I'm setting myself up as being a leader of anybody. I couldn't lead anybody. I'm disqualified from being anybody's leader, even for 2 minutes, or even trying to guide anyone. I just speak my opinion. And according to the code, that's what every victim of racism should do. About what? Not my opinion about what somebody else said, but my opinion about how to replace the system of racism with justice. That's the focus. And that's what in my opinion, I think everybody should focus on. Not who disagrees with whom, because nobody's supposed to disagree with anybody, according to compensatory counter-racist logic. You don't agree with people or disagree with them. You find the truth and present it. The truth about anything. Just present it. Just have a voice in it. Everybody should have a voice. Nobody should be muzzled. Nobody should be saying, well, this is a category of people who you shouldn't pay attention to. No, you pay attention to what everybody says about race, racism, or counter-racism, and according to the code, if anybody asks me about what somebody said about race, racism, and or counter-racism, the code book itself says, I am duty-bound to say just one thing. He said what he said, or she said what she said. And so if you want further information on it, contact that person. Because of what? According to the logic, no one has yet solved the race problem, which is what, according to the code, everybody has a duty to do. There is a problem called the race problem, according to most people on the planet. So no one has solved it. So therefore, no one is qualified to agree or disagree with anybody about the solution, since no one has done it. You can get agreement or disagreement once it's done, and whomever does it can say, okay, everybody else can just shut up now, because it's a done deal. And I did it. I did it. After all this talk about it, I finally did it. I pushed aside everybody else, and I did it. And that person would be telling the truth if that person did it. But so far, no one has done it. So therefore, everybody has a voice, or should have, according to logic.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, Brother Jay. And again, I would ask that from now on, when you write in, please, with respect to the callers and other Gmailers, please reduce it so it's not as lengthy. Good morning to Vorp, who is in the chat room, and Sean with the C is in the chat room. But now I'm going to go to the phone lines, and my brother from Baltimore, my good brother, is in the house. See if I can get him in here. Brother Muko. Okay, Brother Muko, we got you in. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby, Mr. Fuller. How are you doing? Can you guys hear me clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Had one question for you, Mr. Fuller. We've been having these elections going on with these two guys running for a position called president, and I've also been reading a book with Gus T. Renegade on his book club called Caste. This is supposedly Caste is supposedly another word that this author is using for the system of racism, white supremacy. But my question to you, Mr. Fuller, is for my care units all across America right now, because we are really popping off right now. For all my care units, can you please explain the importance of the tool that the white supremacists use called confusion, and how they use that tool to have us arguing amongst each other.
Yes, well,
non-white.
Yes, the white supremacists thrive on confusion, and for a very logical reason. If there's 10 people in a room, and 9 of those people are confused, and the 10th person is not, the 10th person is the most powerful person in that room. You might as well say the most powerful person on the planet in regards to the other 9 people in that room. Why? Because you got 9 people who are confused. Give an illustration, which I give quite frequently, which everybody I think can understand. 10 people in a room, fire alarm goes off. The only person who knows where the fire exit is person number 7. That's the most powerful person in the room. Everybody else is panicking, running in different directions, screaming and yelling. The smoke is gathering. They can smell the smoke. They can see it. Somebody says they see a little glimmer of fire, and it seems to be spreading. And the person who knows where the fire exit is says very calmly, "Follow me." Now, what the white supremacists have done, they have taken down all the fire exit signs, you might say. So therefore, and then they set off the alarm bell, and they set the fire all over the world where there are non-white people. So naturally, everybody has to go to that person. Everybody looks to that person for salvation. That's what the system of white supremacy has done. They've taken down the fire exit signs, then started a fire. But they know where the fire exit is, because they sealed up all but one, and that's through them. They know where it is. They took down all the signs on the other. That's just a kind of a crude illustration, maybe, but maybe people can understand that. And so people who are panicking, they stomp on each other, they punch each other out. If it looks like the fire exit is too narrow for them all to get out in time, they start fighting each other, stepping on each other's feet, screaming and yelling and punching. And that's what non-white people do all over the world here in 2020. We're doing that as we speak now. We even have hostility toward each other when we talk about our plight. We have, just like the caller just said, we fight about how the prison that we're in is being run. And the prison masters look down from their thrones and say, we got them right where we want them. They're down there fighting each other about the decisions that we make. They don't have any decisions to make at all. But they're killing each other down there in the prison yard. Let them kill each other. That's a part of our plan. Hey, saves us some ammunition. Saves us some anguish. We don't have to go down there among them. Let them slaughter each other, arguing about how best to handle us. And can't none of them handle us. None of them got the nerve to even get in our face. So they get in each other's face. That's exactly where we want them. That's why BGQ was invented. It's designed to shut down those arguments if you use it. So to the caller, in answer to the question, you just tell them, BGQ. You can't organize against racism. You can unify, but you unify by pointing to logic. Don't point to any person, because now somebody's going to start making judgments about that person. Because all people have flaws. So that is an argument that will go on forever, and the white supremacists understand that. So if you're going to fall out with logic. But you're going to lose that, because no one, white or non-white, no person ever has had a falling out with logic and being able to defeat logic. Logic came with the universe.
Okay. Brother Muko,
Sure.
thank you so much, my brother. And do not be a stranger and keep on working with your care units.
Definitely. And I want to stay on the line and continue to listen to Mr. Bobby.
Okay.
So don't disconnect you.
All righty. All right. Thank you very much.
Nice day.
Okay. All righty. We'll put you on the mute there and got you together. Okay. Let me do this as a reminder. If you decide to do the Gmail, please, ma'am, please, sir, bear in mind that if you write it, let's say for today's show, most of the time it will not be read that particular day, but at some point in time, if it's not automatically deleted, it will be read. That is contingent upon the callers that call and then the explanations that Mr. Fuller gives. I have no control over that part of it right there. So, in other words, just because you send it today does not necessarily mean that it will be read on today. Some people say, well, for today's show on so-and-so date. That may not be true. I've tried to honor as much as I can, but sometimes it's just not possible. So bear that in mind when you do that. Okay, let's do this from the Gmails. This is from Daryl. It says this, Mr. Fuller, you say that we should avoid and shun black culture because black culture, according to you, is full of ignorance and foolishness, and none of us should want any part of it. So my question to you this morning is, if black culture should be avoided at all cost, should we also avoid white culture? Not white supremacist culture, but white culture. And what would you, Mr. Fuller, define as white culture, and what is white culture, or is white culture similar in any way to black culture?
White culture is white supremacists. The white supremacists don't do anything. I don't care what it is. Small, big, round, square, whatever they do in any of the areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, war, whatever a white supremacist does is designed to give strength to the system of white supremacy. That's their entire culture. They don't fool with anything that doesn't make them stronger. They don't fool with anything that's going to make them weaker, even when it appears that that's what they're doing. They know how far to go. They'll take opium and all like that and fool around, get drunk on Christmas, and they'll do that type of thing. And black people copy that, which is all a part of black culture too, because culture is what you're doing at the time you're doing it. That's why I'm saying black culture is a failure, because it's weak. W-E-A-K. It's a weak culture. It's not strong. If it was a strong culture, no black person would be subject to racism. That's a strong culture. A strong culture is that they are not victimized. They're not prisoners of war. Black people all over the world have become prisoners of the system of white supremacy, according to the evidence, not according to Neely Fuller. That's why we're having this program. That's why you have all the different organizations. That's why people demonstrate. That's why people sing, "Oh, we shall overcome." Black Lives Matter. Mr. Floyd says, "I can't breathe." That's on account of the failure of black culture. We can't excuse that. We can't prop it up. And we can't say how it used to be 1,000,000 years ago. Well, whatever those people were doing 1,000,000 years ago didn't work when they came up against, quote, unquote, white culture. Whatever that black culture was 2,000 years ago or whenever, it didn't hold up. it was a weak culture. So trying to go back to some culture we had before, logically speaking, failed. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation about it now, because failure is passed on from generation to generation. And then another thing, I have asked people at talks, rather than just take a position and then try to hold that position, I explore. When people say, okay, we have a black culture, and black culture should be preserved. So I went to the board on several occasions, and I've done this. I've run tests. And I put at the top of the blackboard to an assembly of people, black culture, and draw a line under it. And then I would enumerate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just 5 elements with nothing else. Black culture at the top, and then I would have the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the blackboard. And then I would ask a sizable audience, can anybody tell me, because we're going to define black culture now, what exactly is black culture? I mean, you know, something that black people do that nobody else does. Nobody. And that we should really hold on to, because it is super bad. It will take us right where we need to go every time. It is not a failed culture. We do this one thing or these 5 things, and we got it. And we have it. We're not looking for it, because that's what black culture is, what you're doing. Okay? So I asked the audience. All right, starting with number 1. Somebody tell me, what is black culture? On several occasions, everybody in the audience went completely silent. Now, that's been my experience. Now, you can run the same test yourself at a meeting or anything. I mean, while you're talking about black culture, first of all, let's define it. Let's get a definition for black culture, something that black people do that nobody does, and that is miraculous in the wonders that it works. Because when you do it, when you dip into this black culture, it solves problems like you wouldn't believe. I guess that would be the only reason for having one. You can solve a problem, all right? So I said, what is black culture? Feebly, on a couple of occasions, out of about 4 tries in different places, someone held up their hand and said, black music. We have music like nobody else has. Oh, okay. So I put that on the board. Music. Then I turn to the audience and say, okay, number 2, silence. I never got beyond black music. Nobody ever said anything else. I'm looking for a definition. Words have definitions. You got to put something up there now that nobody else has. Now, I would question black music, all right? Music is kind of spread all over the place, whatever you want to call music, because now we get to a question about what is black music? What really makes music black? And when is music not black? And so for the audience right now, the world audience, I'm still searching right now in the year 2020, Neely Fuller, I'm going on record now, worldwide, because this keeps coming up every now and then. What exactly is black culture, and what exactly is not black culture? Because I got to have a definition. If you don't have a definition for words, it's just a lot of shouting and anger and emotional here and there, and that's what I've seen. Or when you really just orchestrate it like I did in those seminars, you get dead silence, because that's all I've gotten. I got black music and dead silence without even having a definition for black music. Silence. Talking about black culture. Silence. I mean, why isn't everybody talking at once? Just falling all over each other, giving me a long list of what black culture is. I concluded, and I put it in the book, black culture, just like any culture, is whatever you're doing at the moment you're doing it. Why? Because that's based on logic. That's any person, anywhere, any creature, any squirrel, any bee, any bird. What is the culture of a bird? If the bird flies, that's the culture of that bird. When the bird is no longer flying, flying is not a part of the culture of the bird. Why? Because it's not in flight. Culture itself is whatever you're doing at the moment that you're doing it. And that's all that it is. If you are paddling a canoe, that's your culture. If you get out of that canoe and start walking across the desert with a pint of whiskey in your hand, that's your culture. Canoe paddling is no longer your culture. Why? Because that's not what you're doing at that moment. Culture of any kind is whatever you're doing at the moment you're doing it. If you're gang banging, that's your culture. If you're killing another black person, that's black culture. In action, big time. According to what? Neely Fuller? No, according to logic. Always follow logic.
Okay. You're listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Contact numbers are 516-453-9921. You can Gmail me, the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. If you do contact the show, please, ma'am, please, sir, give your name to the show producer so that I can read your name across the air. And if you do write me or Gmail me, please keep in mind, make it short so that it can be read for radio, or else I may have to edit them, which would leave out maybe some important parts. I don't want to resort to that, but some are writing novels, and we don't have the time to do that. We only have a 2-hour window. So please, ma'am, please, sir, do that, and we can continue as what we are doing to one of the world's greatest radio programs, and not because I'm on it, but because Neely Fuller is speaking the truth. Thank you, Moon Pie, for checking in. Thank you to Robert for making sure that Mr. Fuller and myself sound okay. And with that in mind, let me go to Imani before I go to this email. Okay, Imani, I think I got you on. Okay, there you go, Imani. What is your question for him? Good morning, and what is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Greetings, Mr. Bobby. Greetings, Mr. Fuller.
Greetings.
And greetings to all of the callers and the listeners. Mr. Fuller, I've been knowing you since December 7th, 1990. And you've always said about your 3 books that if you don't think that you are a victim of racism, white supremacy, and there is a global system of racist white supremacy, that is not one, then the book is not for you. But we know that white people pay attention to their Negroes, to non-white people. And I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that white people have read your books. I'm guessing that they have read your books, 1 or all 3 of them. Could you give us a report on what was a response that may have gotten to you from a white person
that has read either one of your books in entirety or all three of them?
I have never talked to a white person who said that he or she has read anything that I wrote, ever.
Okay.
They have heard, I've talked to some white people who have heard me talk because they were there in the audience. And all they have ever said, the two or three who said anything at all, just came down and said, what you're saying is very interesting. And then they walk away. And that only happened a couple of times in all the years I've been doing what I've been doing. They said something to the effect of, what you're saying is very interesting. Very interesting. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any suspicions?
One young white person said, what you put together there is immaculate. He used that word immaculate. And then he walked off. And now this is, I'm talking about all the years. White people have been in the audience. Didn't say one word about.
Do you have any suspicions or thoughts on why there's such a vacated response to your books? I mean, white people talk about racism, white supremacy, especially over the last year or two, a whole lot. And do you have any suspicions on why you haven't had a report directly or indirectly on your books from white people? Do you have any suspicions on why that's not happening?
Well, my suspicion is they have looked at it and say, those who have taken any interest at all have probably said, well, nobody's listening to him and acting on what he's saying or repeating what he's saying or giving reference to what he's saying. So the white supremacist general pattern is when nobody's paying attention to what a black person is saying, meaning other black people, to a degree that is taking some type of effect on the business of white supremacists. They don't pay attention to anybody like that. And I think I'm in that category. That's just my opinion. Mm-hmm. They don't hear my name mentioned, on television or nothing. So once I get my name mentioned or something like that, now I'm going to be in trouble. That's when the stuff starts. But see, the white supremacists, they don't look at the speaker. I don't care what kind of speaker it is. They look at the audience. And if the audience is just going about doing the same old things they've always done, the white supremacists said it's just business as usual. Let all of them talk. Let them talk all they want to. As long as nothing changes, we don't care. They can say anything they want to say. We're running everything. Business is business. Business is running smoothly. Why should we say anything? Why draw attention to anybody? There's no attention to be drawn. We're in business. They're not. They're squabbling among themselves about how to look at us, how to handle us, if they got nerve to even try. But they're squabbling among themselves. They don't squabble with us. So the heck with them, all of them, Fuller and anybody else that shows up. Who are they? A bunch of Negroes. They're a bunch of prisoners of war. What do we care about what they think? Black Lives Matter. They kidding. Matter to whom? Might matter to them. Doesn't even matter to them if we say so, because we got them killing each other. They're a bunch of garbage. Not pay attention to them. Neely, Fuller, all the rest of them put together. That's the white supremacist philosophy.
All right. Thank you, Brother Imani, and don't be a stranger. Okay. Let me say this in regards to that, Mr. Fuller. because of the technology and because you and I are on this particular platform, I am able to see, for the most part, those that do call in, and we have certain people, and the one thing that you've always stressed, always, is to tell the truth. I never forgot that. And anything you do, to tell the truth. And the truth of the matter is that they do monitor you, because I can see it on the screen. They don't ever talk. They don't ever say anything, but we are being monitored and watched and listened to for whatever that you say. They are there. So just keep that in mind with all the technology and surveillance that goes on all over. In fact, we all are in one way or the other. So that we can keep focused, Mr. Fuller, on what we're trying to do. You say this at least once every show, and I want to make sure that no matter what questions that are asked, I want you to repeat this statement that you made back in 1971, that you start off with every program, and I'm going to ask the listeners to keep that in mind as we proceed. Mr. Fuller, you know the statement. Could you go ahead at this particular time and make that statement?
Yes, I have it in the book. And
yes, sir.
I put it on a separate page, and take up the whole page, in both the revised edition of the 1984 edition and the Word Guide. If you do not understand white supremacy, parentheses, racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. I'm going to repeat that. If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Why do I say that? Because everything is connected. That's why the universe is called the universe. Every grain of sand is connected with every drop of snow on Mount Everest. And the grain of sand is somewhere 1,000 miles away, or 2,000 miles, or 10,000 miles in a desert. But somehow they're connected. Everything in the universe, that's why they call it united. Everything affects everything else. That's why when people say that things are separate, they're correct. But they also affect each other. An orange has an effect on an apple, even though they're two different things altogether. Why? Because an orange and an apple are in the same universe. They have a certain way of being nurtured. They both come out of the ground. You say, well, the ground is not the same everywhere. True. But there is a connection between one plot of ground and another. Like the planet Earth. All of that dust and air and water, all of it is connected. So if you don't understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will confuse you. Why? Because among the people of the planet, the white supremacists affect people more than anyone else, any other group of people on the planet. And they're the most powerful group of people on the planet. Those white people who believe in white supremacy and who practice what they believe. There's no religion or no political system more powerful than them. According to whom? Neely Fuller? No. According to the truth. According to all of the evidence. Black people all over the world here in 2020, which way did the white people go? On boats, falling in the water with their children in their arms. Saying what? Which way did the white people go? I don't know what to do. I can't get along with my own people. They are not my own people. I don't know who they are. I was raised up among them, but we're slaughtering each other. We don't know what to do with each other. We're just walking around bumping into each other. I'm out of here. Which way did the white people go? I got to get somewhere where things make sense. Well, somebody tells them, oh, well, white people will beat up on you. They'll laugh at you. They'll make fun of you. They'll keep you. They're not going to give you very much of anything. Well, they'll give me more than what I'm getting here. I want out of here. Because what I'm going to get here is just a sudden death. I might be able to breathe a little bit longer if I get among some white people, take my baby with me, ask them to educate my baby, because I don't know enough in my head to educate them. I ain't got enough food on the table to feed them. It's all messed up where I came from. I'm telling the truth, folks. All over the world, this is true.
Yes, sir. Okay, this is the order that we're going to do this. We're going to do a Gmail. We're going to have Mr. Fuller speak on his book. And then we're going to go to Stephen and then John in that order. Mr. Fuller, let's do this. This comes from Overmind. He says, thank you for speaking, you do. And he would like to say this. The concept of having a code that covers thought, speech, and action, and the perspective that you have on the subject of white supremacy and racism is quite interesting, and I have never seen or heard such a thing from anyone advocating for racial equality and justice from you and your team. I believe that more needs to be understood, and your way of doing it and the philosophy behind it seems straightforward, and I like it. Thank you for your work. With that in mind, I'd like to ask you these questions and appreciate your response. I would like to know if you have a recommended book list. What are the requirements for someone who wishes to continue your work? Can you create an episode where you speak on your life and how you came to your theory? And finally, can you explain briefly a personal experience involving each area of activity? That's a lot. Okay, let's go back to the first one. I would like to know if you have a recommended book list.
No, I don't, because the list would be too long.
Okay.
I've read everything from detective novels to James Baldwin's works to Richard Wright's works. Started on Uncle Tom's Cabin, never did finish. Huckleberry Finn, I've read stuff all over the place. So I recommend you just read whatever you think you can get some sense out of to do what? According to the code, which is what I've written, read everything that will help you to solve a problem.
Okay.
That's the best way, because there are millions of books and more coming down the pike. But I would say that naturally I would recommend that people go to producejustice.com and start off maybe with my book. And then and when you read the book that I have written, read it with a critical eye, meaning read it saying in your mind, I'm not going to believe nothing in here. I'm going to see if it's true after I read it. I ain't starting off with, my attitude is, this Neely Fuller guy that wrote this book, he probably don't know what he's talking about. He probably got it all wrong. That's how I want people to really approach my book. Because one of the first people to read my book, when I first wrote it, I gave it to a person that I was working with on the job, and that person told me, he brought the book back, and said, "You know what you got there, Fuller?" I said, "What?" Because I was all, I wanted some feedback. And he says, "You got a whole lot of nothing here. This book ain't worth nothing. It ain't nothing in this book, man, that helped me do nothing. You might as well, you just wasted your time. I don't know what you wrote a book like that for." And I said, "You didn't get nothing out of the book? You didn't see any paragraph or anything?" He said, "There ain't nothing in that book that'll help me do nothing." He said, "Don't you tell nobody about this book, man." Say, "Forget about this book. There ain't nothing to it." And then my response was, "That's exactly the way the book is supposed to work." So I recommend that for any book that anybody reads.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, read it, and if it means anything to you, use what is in there that will work for you. If it won't, put it down and get another book or write a book of your own.
Okay.
If you need one.
Okay, let's do this here. Questions 3 and questions 4 are really connected in that question 3 says, "Can you create an episode where you speak on your life and how you came into your theory?" Well, you and I have been doing this for a number of years, and to this person who asked this question, if you have listened over the years to the many shows, Mr. Fuller has explained how he came into this theory. How he came into this theory. So there are many combined episodes for that. And again, if you have listened to the program, he has spoken briefly a personal experience involving each of the 9 areas, except for war, the last one, and he has even explained why he doesn't speak publicly about that. So those 2 questions are together, if you will. So I don't think that, like I said, if you put them all together, then you have that. You have what you need for that. But the second question is, he wanted to know, Mr. Fuller, what are your requirements for someone who wishes to continue your work?
Oh, people, I'm not structured that way. And I'll answer that last question first, if I understand it. The first question and the last question. But the last question is, it's not a matter of continuing Neely Fuller's work. It's a matter of solving problems. That's not Neely Fuller. Neely Fuller doesn't have a handle on solving all the problems on the planet. But black people should just concentrate on one thing. Am I a problem solver or a problem maker? And most black people have the reputation for being problem makers. So just anything that solves problems should be the goal of every black person. And that doesn't have necessarily anything to do with Neely Fuller's work. It has to do with problem solving. Black people have a reputation for not being problem solvers worldwide. Oh, you look up and see some black people coming. Oh, this means trouble. This don't mean nothing but trouble. That's all you're going to get out of them. I don't care how they start out or what their intentions are and all like that. You're not going to get nothing out of them black people but a whole lot of problems that you didn't have before. That is the position of many people throughout the planet, including black people among themselves. Here we come. Problem time. It's going to be some kind of tearing down or messing up. I mean, anything that got started that looks like it's going somewhere that makes sense, they're going to mess it up. Let some black people get involved, it's going to get messed up. That's a guarantee. Okay? That's our reputation. So all we got to do is not concentrate on Neely Fuller's work. Concentrate on just 2 words. Have a reputation for being a problem solver. A constructive problem solver. That's all it takes for everybody on the planet, regardless of who it is, white, non-white. Be a problem solver. And the world will take notice of you instantly. I've seen that. I'm a witness to that, and everybody has seen people who can solve problems. People go to people who solve problems. Neely Fuller has not proven that he solved any problem. All right? So you can repeat what Neely Fuller says or recommend his book. Don't try to rewrite his book. Try to write one that's a whole lot better, if anything, because Neely Fuller hasn't solved any problem yet. I'm trying to solve the race problem. One problem, one book.
Okay. All righty. I'll tell you what. Sean from Atlanta and John from Georgia, this is what I'm going to do. We are up against the station break in about 3 or 4 minutes, so I'm going to have Mr. Fuller speak about his book that you can get from Produce Justice until that takes up the time, and then I'll bring you in at the top of the new hour. So, Mr. Fuller, to conclude this hour, we got about 3.5 minutes. Speak about your book, please, sir.
The book is basically just a guide pointing to logic. When people say, "What is this book about?" whatnot, I'm pointing to a thing called logic. Now, what is logic? Logic is cause and effect. Fire will burn, water is wet. That's all I really do. And you can get the book by going to producejustice.com. And I'm saying there is a system of government in place that should not have ever existed. That is the system of white supremacy. In capital letters, that's the way I put it. And it gets in the way of solving the world's problems in the way that the world's problems should be solved. Now, the system of white supremacy has produced many things. It's set up to produce many things very efficiently. It's turned out in recorded history, no one in technology has been more powerful than the collection of people who have decided to be racists, white supremacists, meaning mistreating people and dominating them on the basis of color, dominating and mistreating. And that's turned out to be the most materialistic, efficient system ever produced in recorded history. The system of white supremacy produces many things, all kinds of things that work very well. But where's the problem? It throws away millions of people in the process. So you can produce many things with that system, but the many things that you produce and enjoy, it comes at a cost of destroying millions of people, even before they're born. It's all set up. It's on automatic. So black people are destroyed even before they're born. They're destined for nothing but misery in the system of white supremacy. It's set up that way. But it turns out a whole lot of things that work very well. A lot of toys, a lot of trains and airplanes and that type of stuff. It's very efficient when it comes to that. It's not efficient when it comes to having any regard for people. So we say, well, what system would be better? And that's a logical question to ask. A system of justice, because a system of justice means you guarantee that no person is mistreated, and guarantee that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. People have talked about justice, but they have never seriously tried it. But you can't have justice and white supremacy in the same universe at the same time. So you have to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. Now, it is true that things will slow down, but so what? We're not going anywhere anyway. I mean, the world's in a mess. So if you slow down and not have a mess, there's no real cost in slowing down. A system of justice would be slower than a system of white supremacy, meaning nobody would be mistreated, and you're guaranteeing that nobody's being mistreated. That's slow, if you're going to guarantee that. People won't be rushing around so much. But maybe people need to slow down a little bit anyway. White supremacist gets a lot of things done real fast, but it leaves a whole bunch of wreckage in its path. You look behind it, and my goodness, the bodies, the minds, a whole lot of waste. Humanity is wasted in the process. So that's what we need. We need people who are committed to justice and not this rotten system called the system of white supremacy, because it messes up too many people.
Okay.
You can get the book by going to producejustice.com.
All righty. We are way over our time, but let's do this. You've been listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., the conclusion of the first hour. Stay tuned for the second hour, which will begin in 5 seconds. Good morning and welcome to the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. To get in contact with the show, call this number, 516-453-9921. Press the number 1 button and you will go in rotation to the basically to the top of the line, or you'll be in rotation for that. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, @gmail.com. Your Gmail will not be read today, but it will go into another rotation, and at some point in time, if it's not automatically deleted, it will be read, but that's contingent upon the callers and how many Gmails we do get. Chat room is now open. Brightness, Sean from Cleveland. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this other name here, but they know who they are. So Pammy or whatever. I'm sorry if I butchered your name, which I will do, not on purpose. And Vorplight is in the chat room, and it is open, so you can leave a comment there if you want to. I can't say that it will be read, but I'll do whatever I can do. But let's go here. Let's go way down in the ATL, and we finally are going to get Sean in the house. Oh, excuse me, Stephen. Stephen, my bad. Stephen, you're in the house with Mr. Fuller. Good morning, and what is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. How are you guys?
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. Sir, Mr. Fuller, my question is, what would you consider to be of constructive value in all people's activities? And if you can, give us an example of what we can consider to be of constructive value.
Anything that improves. Problem solving. Those are the two words. Constructive problem solving. The white supremacists are the greatest problem solvers on the planet. They're also the greatest problem makers on the planet.
Yes.
Because they study everything. So you have to study things. Black people do what? We study each other. That's why we don't learn anything. Black people pay attention to each other more than they pay attention to anything in the universe. We walk past mountains. We walk past grains of sand. We walk past everything. We walk past tall buildings looming around us and never even ask a question. What do they do in these buildings? What do they do in each floor? What do they do in each one of these offices in this place where I work and scrub the floors or carry messages or something? What do they do in here? What does each person do at each one of those desks? Now, that's the difference between the white supremacists and the black people of this planet. the white supremacists are curious about everything. That's how they became supreme. They study a grain of sand at the bottom of the ocean, and you walk past them. I've given this illustration before, and it's in the original textbook. You look at them and say, "What are you doing?" "Ralph," say, "I'm studying." "Studying what?" "Studying this grain of sand." "Studying a grain of sand? What for?" "Because it's there. I never seen a grain of sand like this before." You say, "Well, what's that got to do with anything?" Say, "Well, I'm going to find out what it has to do with me and you and the universe that I'm in. This grain of sand is here. I'm here. So I was put here with this grain of sand to find out what this grain of sand is here for, and I ain't moving from this microscope until I figure it out." And it turns out he finds out that grain of sand, if you get enough of them together, you can make a building that will last for 10 million years and put it up in about 30 minutes. Okay? This is maybe 50 years down the road. The white supremacists think like that. How many black people think like that anywhere on the planet? Black people just walk around and look at what? Each other. "What's that you got on, man? Where you get them clothes?" Man, that ain't in style no more. That was in style 2 years ago. You ought to get dressed like me. Yeah, that's how. Get like me. Black people comparing themselves with each other, and the white supremacists looking down from their throne, saying, "As long as they think like that, we got them. Keep them thinking like that. Keep them all huddled together in the prison yard that we put them in, comparing their chains that we put on them with the chains on the people in the other cell block. That's what you call the Negro mind. Keep them in that state." Now, in answer to your question, I hope that's the frame of reference. We need to break out of that thinking and think universal. Take an interest in everything that is of constructive value, because everything that you do is going to have a constructive effect or a non-constructive effect. You want to know an illustration? A simple one. Sit down to a plate of food and ask yourself, when I eat this food on this plate, is my body going to improve or is it going to deteriorate? Halloween coming up. What do we have people doing? Going around, young people in some costumes, signifying death, and collecting what? Candy. Now, the white supremacists instituted this type of stuff, but black people, me too, we are doing it too. Sir. Stop doing it. The code says, stop doing it. Stop doing it. And explain it to the young people. It's going to be painful, but see, no pains, no gains. You say, well, that's what we did last year. I say, no. All that candy is going to do is rot your teeth out. Then we got a dental bill. There's 6 of y'all in this family. Now I got dental bills for all 6 of you, and I don't have no dental insurance. You're going to have rotten teeth because that's not real food. You're gathering up a whole bunch of stuff that's going to destroy you, and you're wearing costumes about destruction. You're wearing costumes about death. And the white supremacists is associated with Halloween with what? Black and orange. Think about that. See, the white supremacists know what they're doing. Black and orange, the Halloween colors. And when you think about black people, you think about what? Orange. Orange jumpsuits. in a cell block. It's all around you.
Okay. All right, Stephen from Atlanta, thank you very much for your call, and do not be a stranger. Thank you so much. Okay, let's do... I had him right here. There you go. Let's do John from the great state of Georgia. Okay, John, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller. I would like to ask Mr. Fuller, is white supremacy a strategized science, or is they universally cursing and have no feeling for what they do?
The question is what now?
Is white supremacy a strategized science, or is they just universally curse and have no feelings of how they treat people of darker skin on the planet?
No, that I don't know. I don't know why white people do what they do. When I first started talking to Dr. Welsing, and after about a year of telling her what my theories were and all like that, she said that she was going to branch out from that, and she was going to study why white people act the way that they act toward the non-white people of the world. She was going to study every detail of it. So I said, well, I don't have time for that, or I'm not going to take the time because, a lot of people have written histories and all like that. I said, I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing, which is what to do about it. And so she said, well, that makes sense. She said, but also people are going to want to know the answer to the question that you are proposing here in 2020. And that is, why do they do what they do? And my answer is, I don't know, because I gave up on trying to figure that out a long time ago and started concentrating on what to do about it on a day-to-day basis, which is what my book is about. But there are books, including Dr. Francis Wilson's books, I understand, the ISIS Papers, and a pamphlet on color confrontation that gives some guidance about that. Why white people do what they do and the way that they go about doing it and the reasons. And she has delved into that, and maybe other authors have too. But I say, and I started writing my book because I said I got a whole lot of history books, and I got a lot of social analysis. I got everything from the Civil Rights Commission, all right, which is white people and black people getting together, trying to figure out why the riots happen and all like that. I said, but I'm going to concentrate on what black people as individual people each and every day can do about it. Because the average black person, including myself, I just want to know what to do about stuff. I don't want to people keep talking about how much pain the system of racism is causing. I mean, I think that most black people are familiar with the pain. I want to know how to get rid of the pain. And so I started writing something that I think my book is designed to do that. How to get rid of the pain and how to get rid of the source of the pain. That's what my book is about. So far, I've missed the mark, but I think I'm on the correct path.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, John from Georgia, the ATL. Thank you for your calling. Again, don't be a stranger. Okay. Let's do this here. Before I get to either Ike or Ikey. Armand says this, Mr. Fuller from the Gmail, for something to be constructive, does it have to be planned? For instance, such as a conversation that happens to be constructive but wasn't necessarily plotted out. Mr. Neely Fuller, could you possibly be able to break down this question?
Yes, everything has a plan that works. Whether that plan comes in 2 seconds, some people can, who with a quick mind can think of how to solve a problem faster and with great accuracy than a person who's been sitting around scratching their head trying to solve that same problem for 20 years. And somebody can walk into the room and they'll do it in 5 minutes. Now, what's the difference? The time and the insight, the ability to find what's logical. Some people can do it fast. Some people can do it slowly. Not everybody learns at the same pace. Every teacher knows that. You got 5 students in a room. They don't all learn the same thing, the same way at the same time in lockstep. That teacher's going to have to single out maybe 1 or 2 of those people and come to their desk and explain something in finer detail, because the other 3 people picked it up right quick, but 2 of the people didn't. And every teacher should understand that. Not everybody learns at the same pace. So that's just the way that works. And a person who is considered retarded in a classroom may turn out to be, 10 years later, when everything comes together, have a eureka moment, and all of a sudden, the things that they have not been able to figure out, they can now figure it out. It just comes together all of a sudden. And sometimes that person is considered to be a retarded person. It's considered to be a genius. But every teacher said, there's nothing we can do about that. The person is too retarded. The mind is too far gone. The person is unteachable. They're unteachable at that moment. But you don't know what may evolve later on. See, no one yet has come forward and been able to produce with accuracy the future of anything.
Okay. All righty. There you go. Let's go to the phone lines, and it's either Ike or Ikey from Texas. I have a friend. His name is Ikey, but he spells it just like you spelled it. But here in America, you never know. It's either Ike or Ikey. So what is it, sir?
All right. Yeah, it's Ike and Ike as well. Some call me Ike, some say Ike. So
okay, all right. Just wanted to be sure.
Yeah.
Good morning, and what is your question for Mr. Fuller?
All righty. All right. Well, good morning, Mr. Fuller. I've I guess for the last few years, I've really studied your work, and in addition, Dr. Wilson's work. And I think you kind of just touched on it. I want to be clear about my thoughts here. I think I heard you say Dr. Wilson was really focused on the why, and you were focused on more so on the what. Is that right?
I was focused on what to do about it on a day-to-day basis. In other words, everything in the textbook for victims of white supremacy that I have written is directed toward the individual person. What you can do about every situation that you're in, because every black person on the planet is in some type of situation every minute of the day. So the book is about what you should be doing and should not be doing in all of those minutes without skipping over a single minute. Everything should be tailored. Black people are known as just wanderers. It's all over the place. That's why, collectively or even individually, we are not considered to be what? Problem solvers. But if we get a problem-solving mind, we'll solve problems. We're not there.
My question is...
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt, but my question is, when I think about Dr. Wilson's work and what I, if I can sum it up, I mean, it's basically what she was saying was that, because, the white people are recessive, they're genetically recessive to, just say black people who are genetically dominant. then their existence basically depends on, in a lot of ways, their aggressiveness, right? It's kind of like a litter of puppies. If you have a small puppy, if they're not aggressive and they don't, then they don't eat, because they're small and they get pushed around, right? So they, in a lot of ways, they come to the earth and they, have this genetic makeup, and they have to be aggressive to survive, right? And I know that's kind of general. You can kind of look at that a bunch of different ways, but that's kind of what I gathered, and I think that's what Dr. Wilson was saying, because, they were they're recessive, then they have to be aggressive, right? So, when it comes to black people and our dominant genes genetically, we don't come to the earth with that. So we don't have that spirit of, fearful of not, eating or whatever it is. So we're not as aggressive in that sense, right? So I guess, the question is, I don't even know what the question is, other than, what do you do in that situation? If you had this group of people that are born, with a recessive gene, then, and they have to be a certain way to survive, then, that's just the way of the universe, right? I mean, and I guess you have to figure out, like you said, solving problems, but I think you have to start with understanding that these people are, they have to be a certain way to survive. If they, if they not elite, if they kind of mix in with people, then they're going to disappear, to kind of separate themselves, from everybody else. So, what are your thoughts on that? What do you do in that case?
My thoughts on that is exactly what you said. You think about it. Now, you said that's what you were thinking. But you said you don't know what the question is. So you can't solve any kind of problem until you have a question and an answer. So you got to figure out what the question is that you want answered. Now, you asked me what did I think about it. I think that you need a question that needs answering. Because all problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. So if you ask the question of yourself, it's something about the nature of a question. The answer will gravitate toward the person who is asking the question. That's the nature of the universe. That's how inventors invent things. They ask questions, and they ask questions, and they ask questions. And little by little, there's something in the universe that says there's a question being presented by somebody or some source. So the answer to that question starts gravitating toward the person who is asking the question. So the first order of business, since you said you didn't really have a question, except to ask me, what did I think? So I'm telling you what I think in answer to your question, because that was a question. What do I think? I think you should ask that question about genetics and white people until you come up with an answer, because the answer will come to you if you keep asking that question.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
That's the universal process.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Now, if I come up with a question, I'll call back. And one last thing, Mr. Bobby.
Yes, sir.
You there? Okay.
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay. Sorry. I had actually spoke to you a while back, and I just wanted to check and make sure that you had the same number, and I'll give you a call a little bit later.
I have the same number.
Okay. I'll give you a call a little bit after you get up there. All right, thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Okay. All righty. Let's see here. Let's go. Whoa. Who was on here? Somebody was on here and okay. Somebody was on here. Whoever I maybe I clicked you off. I didn't mean to. If I did, call back and I'll make sure that you go to the front of the line. Mr. Fuller, a question from the Gmails that I meant. Oh, okay. Yeah, I meant to get this question, but it should have been first, but it wasn't anywhere. This comes from Eli. It says this, Mr. Fuller, are you aware of King David and King Solomon's rulership? There was once justice on the earth, at least in their kingdoms. This is in response to you saying something along the lines of there has never been justice anywhere on the planet in recorded history. This is in accordance with the history book called the Bible. So he wanted to know, were you aware of King David's and King Solomon's rulership?
I have heard of King David and King Solomon, but I am not aware of justice ever being produced among all of the people of the entire planet, because that's what you have to have. You have to have no person being mistreated. Every picture I've ever seen that's supposed to typify biblical times, I've seen people with swords. People wearing swords, and sometimes carrying them in their hands. And and these are supposed to be based on, sometimes the pictures appear in Bibles. People with swords. Now, an indication to me, if people are walking around with swords in their hands, somebody's being mistreated. Otherwise, why the swords? That's a question that I ask. All problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. So I'm taking the position, and I think it's correct. In recorded history, there's never been a thing called justice produced, because justice, by definition, compensatory. This is the definition I made up, because I wasn't satisfied with the dictionary definitions of justice. There are dictionary definitions of justice. I asked a lawyer some years ago, what's the actual legal definition for the word justice? And he said there is none, except what the Supreme Court says it is. And I decided, well, the Supreme Court people change. So justice doesn't change. Laws might change that people make, but justice remains the same. And then I kept asking, what is the definition for justice? And I kept getting this. This is what somebody says it is. Well, I'm somebody. So I came up with one in 1994. I said, justice, there's two elements in it. Got to guarantee that no person is mistreated. And you got to guarantee that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now, I understand that from what I have heard, back in the time of Jesus, and even before then, particularly in the Old Testament, a lot of people who call themselves Christians say the Old Testament is just full of stuff. All of that. There's a whole bunch of people mistreating people. All through it. In the Bible itself. That's what people tell me who are familiar with the Bible. And they say that Jesus left here and looked back at the mess and say, I'll come again. That's what people have told me. Every preacher I've ever talked to said, Jesus said, I'm going to leave here and I'm coming back. And I'm coming back because when I come back, then all this mess will be cleared up, because everything that has gone before me don't amount to nothing. This is a bunch of trash, all of it. All of you are a bunch of sinners. That's why I came. Now, I had never talked to any preacher of any denomination who didn't center what he said, not around Solomon or around King David, but around Jesus. So it seems like it's a whole lot of arguments going on between so many millions of people on this planet about the book called the Bible, the book called the Quran, the holy books of Judaism, all of the scriptures and whatnot, and holy books of Hinduism. So what did Neely Fuller do? I backed off and said, until everybody can get an agreement on what all this means, then you can come talk to me. After y'all stop hitting each other over the head with what the Bible says in barbershop discussions. Now, the code requires me to do that. I cannot take positions on any religion except one, the religion of white supremacy. I flat out say that religion should be done away with, because that's the religion that dominates me and my behavior. That religion has more to do with what I do than any religion and all the other religions put together on this planet. The white supremacists, I obey them more than I obey anybody, and that's the truth. And so,
alrighty,
that's my answer.
Okay. You are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. We have about 29 minutes left in this second hour of the program, and you are invited to call at 516-453-9921. Make sure that you press the number 1 button so that I can get to your question. If you Gmail me, please do not write me a letter, ma'am, sir, but make it short and sweet so they can be read over the air for radio broadcast. That Gmail address is number 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY @gmail.com, and I will do that. Okay, Mr. Fuller will talk about his book coming up. Somebody wanted to know if Mr. Fuller ever read the King James version of the Bible, cover to cover. We'll ask him that if we can get to that. But right now, for the remaining 27 minutes, we're going to take this phone call from Imani, I think, and then we'll go to Bogus. Let's go to Imani. Okay, Imani, you're back. Go ahead, please.
Yes, can I be heard?
You're back, Imani.
Yes, sir. Mr. Fuller, 2 movies. Just wondering if you have viewed them. The first one is The Day the Earth Stood Still. I'm talking about the older version, the one that was done in the 1950s. And a movie that took place in 1964 that reportedly Malcolm X said it was the best movie he ever saw, Nothing But a Man, 1964, I believe. Have you ever seen one or both of those movies? And through your observation, did you recognize lessons in the 2 movies?
I vaguely remember The Day the Earth Stood Still, but just vaguely. I don't remember anything about the movie, anything other than the title, even though I think I saw it. Now, the other movie, Nothing But a Man, that's on my recommended list.
Okay.
Yes, I have seen Nothing But a Man, and I recommend that people see that movie. I think it's a lesson movie. It's a movie with lessons in it. And you can look for the lessons and make up your own mind, because that's how I recommend movies. Look for the lessons and make up your own mind about what you have learned and the value of what you have learned.
Yes, sir. I don't know if you can view the first movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still on YouTube, but you can right now view the movie Nothing But a Man on YouTube. And as Mr. Fuller stated, to me it's full of lessons, and it's lessons in all areas of activity when it comes as far as a victim of racism, white supremacy in the movie. I can find every people activity involving in that movie.
Okay. Good recommendation, Yamani. Nothing But a Man on YouTube. Okay. Thank you so much, Yamani. And again, don't be a stranger in which you weren't. Very good. Okay. Let's see. I got a brother from New York, or got somebody from New York, Bogus. It looks like I have somebody from the 213, which would be California, but that would be next. But anyway, let me do this. Bogus from New York, at least that's what it says on my screen. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Hello, how you doing? Good morning to you, Mr. Bobby and Neely Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. I have a suggestion. Is it possible that in any of the discussions where you could kind of let Neely Fuller kind of just speak at times? I noticed that sometimes when Neely Fuller, like when you let him go, he goes. He goes into details about a lot of many things. And so sometimes it's very interesting to hear him just kind of talk sometimes. That's just a suggestion, if it's ever possible.
Okay. Let me address that since you brought that up. I've been working on that very much so and been allowing Mr. Fuller to complete his sentence even when it goes over the recommended time. But I will continue to work on that so that he can continue to get his points across, even if it does go over time, okay?
All right. That's awesome. Another question I have is, due to the current situation with the black family where, black women are now the breadwinners of the black family, black men have lost most of his so-called manpower. He's now at the bottom of the totem pole, and women sometimes nowadays look at the black men as though they're not going to help them out financially and things of that nature. Do you think white supremacy had something to do with the changing of that order to where black men have lost, like women have lost all respect for them?
The white supremacists have everything to do with everything that black people do. That's why they're called white supremacists in all 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. The white supremacists dominate everything that black people do, non-white people do, in all of these areas of activity 24/7. So, in answer to the question specifically, male-female interaction between black people is all dominated. The area of sex, the 8th area of activity in the textbook, dominated by the white supremacists. Black males cannot be husbands, or black females be wives to each other, black people, in any area of activity, any minute of any day. Totally disqualified. Why? Because we come under the title of what? Prisoners of war. When you are a prison, imagine the world being a prison for black people, and our prison uniform is the color of our skin. Well, what do prisoners do? Do prisoners have wives? Not really. Not really. Do they have husbands? Not really. When it comes to male-female, no. And that's not going to happen under the system of white supremacy. I don't care how you shake it up and pour it. You can't get it. The white supremacists will not allow black males to function as husbands. of black females to function as wives. We are prisoners of war, equal prisoners of war. One doesn't have any more power than the other. Both are beggars. I'm a beggar. I'm not qualified to be anybody's husband. I have to beg for a job. That comes under economics. I have to beg for education. Whatever little certificate I get showing that I learned how to do something, better have somebody's, a white person's signature at the bottom of it. Now, there are some black people who say, oh, Fuller, come on, that ain't so. I got 15 certificates showing that I graduated this and I graduated that and I graduated the other. And it's got all black people's signatures on them. Those black people had to get authorization to put those signatures on those certificates. Have anybody ever thought about that? Authorized by whom? Racist man and racist woman. They determine in the system of white supremacy who is educated and who's not. If the white supremacist said, you're not educated until I say so, you ain't educated, period. And if you run around trying to get somebody to prove that you are, who are you going to prove it by? The white supremacists make all the standards for education worldwide. Even some people even mention the Chinese. Well, the white supremacists say whatever they got, they got it from me, and they're stealing it. But the white supremacists say if they got it, and they have it at all, even if they think they stole it, they didn't really steal it. I let them have it and let them think that they stole it, because I know all about stealing. The white supremacists are the master thieves of the entire planet. They steal whole people, whole continents, and keep them under bondage forever, like in all recorded history. So you can't steal from them, and that's another lesson I want to put across right now. Black people doing this little stuff that they call stealing, stop it. The white supremacists always know what you're doing. You can't put nothing over on them when it comes to stealing. They know everything that there is to know about stealing. There ain't nothing that they don't know about stealing and robbing and killing. So when it comes to that, they're experts, and they have proven it all over the world. So that's a part of the code. Don't steal. Not because it's so-called wrong or because your mother told you not to, but because there ain't no way in the world you can get away with it if the white supremacists don't want you to get away with it. But white supremacists set up stuff for black people to steal it so they can hold it against you anytime they get ready. It's just like drugs. They give us the drugs, then they lock us up because we got the drugs. And then you wind up saying, I can't breathe, because they put us in that position. They are the masters of what they do. They don't miss nothing. They know every detail of everything. This is why I wrote the book.
Okay. Thank you, Monty, Bogus from New York, for your call, and don't be a stranger. Thank you very much. Okay, here, Mr. Fuller, this is what we're going to do. It is 10:44 Eastern Time here in the United States, or the concept called the United States, and this is time for you to speak about your book.
Yes, the book, and the things I've been saying all morning, this morning and every morning, most of it is in the book in one form or another. And not only just woe is me, that's all in there too, but what to do about it on an individual basis without having to look over your shoulder on a job, anything else. You know what to do, you know what not to do. You know what to say, you know what not to say. That's how the book is supposed to be designed. It's tailored to the individual victim of white supremacy. So that anywhere you go on the planet, anytime, you have a code That's what's missing. Black people don't have a code. We have slangs. We have what we call the black lifestyle, whatever that means. But we don't have a code that produces correct and constructive results. Something you can rely on, that when you do it, it works. When you say it, it works. And the things not to do and not to say, because when you say it, it's not going to work. When you do it, it's not going to work. We need a book that gives us that type of guidance. At least it heads us in that direction. Things that you say, word for word. Things that you do. And things that you don't do. We don't have enough guidance about what to do, what not to do. Because everything is about doing and not doing. If you're not doing one thing, you're doing something else. A code book should say black people should have nothing but things that they do that always work. Always, without fail. You don't even have to think about it. You know it ain't going to fail before you do it. That's how the white supremacists operate. And things that you say, the minute you say it, you know that nobody else is going to be able to come behind you and say it any better. That's what we need. And that's what the book is supposed to be designed to help us do. I don't say it does it, but it heads us in that direction because that's what we need. That's the one big thing that's missing. We have never even tried to produce a code. Everybody should be trying to produce code. Not Neely Fuller's code. I've already done that. But just add to how to solve problems, because that's all a code is, problem solving. Black people are loaded with problems. We need books that tell us what to do about everything, and we don't have any. This books tell us how to feel about stuff, but nothing to tell us what to do about anything. But you can get it by going to producejustice.com. And there's a basic book, and then there's a word guide telling you how to use words, what words not to use, what words not ever to use, period, what words to ask questions about. You can get it all by going to producejustice.com. Producejustice.com.
Okay. Let's do this. Let's go to Qua from L.A. Okay.
Good
morning. There you go. Got you. Had to make sure I got you because you were buffering. Go ahead, my brother.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Neely Fuller. You guys do really important work and serious work that you guys do. Mr. Neely Fuller, my question for you is, I was asked a question: How can black people really get serious about creating justice on planet Earth when black people feel like they were betrayed because they were sold into slavery by their fellow African, and also looking at this whole SARS thing where we have like black on black chaos. The whole situation over there is pretty bad because they're not aware that this is happening because of white supremacy. So they're not directing their organization or directing the energy towards white supremacy. They're trying to dismantle SARS, but SARS is just a symptom of white supremacy.
If I understand that long question, have you read the textbook for victims of racism?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the copies?
Yeah, I'm on section 7, people activity of politics, I believe. No, area 6.
Well, that's what the book is for. If I understand your question, we need a code. You're looking at a code book that tells you what to do. For one thing, you look at yourself as a prisoner of war. It tells you to do that because that's what the code says. If you're black and on the planet Earth, that's what you are, a prisoner of war. You were born in a prison system called the system of white supremacy. You're born in it. You've never been out of it. According to what? Neely Fuller? No, according to the evidence. Now, you either accept that or you reject it and say, I'm not a prisoner of war. Well, if you're not a prisoner of war, you ain't got no problem. If you're not a prisoner of the system of white supremacy, you got no problem. The book is not for you. I keep repeating that. The book is not for you. But if you perceive yourself to be subject to the system of white supremacy, the book, all of the book, is go to each area of activity. And whatever problem you're looking at on that particular day, try to find something in that book that addresses that problem. There should be something in there that would at least point you in the direction. It may not give you all the details, but it'll give you some of what to do and what not to do about that problem. I mean, for one thing, it says about black people, if I understand a part of your question, black people, when we get in contact with each other, it usually means something ugly is going to happen. So this thing about the virus that's going around has helped a lot of black people. It's harmed a lot because it's designed to do that too, because the white supremacists will see to that. But some black people have been kind of cut off from other black people because of the virus. And for a whole lot of black people, that is one healthy thing that has happened. Because the code says no contact, no conflict. So you can't be in conflict with somebody you're not in contact with. Most young black people who wind up in trouble, if you examine from the beginning to how they wound up in trouble, go back to the beginning, it has to do with some kind of contact that they made with another black person. See, because we spread poison, because we don't admit to ourselves that we are loaded with poison. And when one black person who is in the system of white supremacy makes contact with another black person, we are spreading poison whether we realize it or not, because each of us, including Neely Fuller, is loaded with poison because the white supremacist has poisoned us. Poison us how? They poison our minds, that's how. A lot of my value system comes from the white supremacists. Why? Who else is it going to come from when they're supreme? What's important to me? What's not? What I need to buy. You know, I turn on the television. Who's telling me what to buy? Who's telling me the thing that's the latest thing to have? Who's telling me what holidays to celebrate? The white supremacists. That's what. And we know about that, but we don't realize that. We think we invented it. That everything that we're doing is our idea. That goes to show you how far off we are. So in answer to the question, that needs to be unraveled. We need a code. We need a new culture other than the culture of submission to and in lockstep with the culture that the white supremacists has laid out to us, which is a complete disaster.
All right, yep.
All righty. Thank you, my brother. And don't be a stranger. Okay, let's see here. Let's go to Texas. Everett. Gotcha. Texas. Houston. Go ahead, Everett.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, my question is, over the weekend or a few days ago, Pope Francis of the Catholic Church, he said in a quote, he condones same-sex marriage outside the church. Now, when I'm reading the code in the sex part, the code tells me sex has become a mighty valuable tool for the white supremacists. So when white people, well, I ain't gonna say white people, when white people make statements like that, the code allows me to say Pope Francis is a suspected white supremacist, since sex is a tool that the white supremacists use to cause confusion.
Well, according to the code, the way you say it, because the code is about how you say things, you never call any person a white supremacist. But you do say if a white person is classified as white, functions as white, says that he or she is white, then that white person, if he or she is able to be, and underline able, to be a white supremacist, should be suspected of being one, regardless of whom they are in the system of white supremacy, or what titles they have, or what their position is supposed to be. If that white person is able, by able I mean you have to know one color from another. You can't not be a white supremacist if you don't know what color something is. You have to be able to distinguish colors in order to be a white supremacist. So if a white person is able to be a white supremacist in the system of white supremacy, according to logic, that white person should be suspected of being a white supremacist. And if a white person is a white supremacist, oh, definitely, that white person will definitely make hash out of a black person's sexuality. I mean, they will make a train wreck.
And
in 2020,
exactly what he did this past weekend.
Hello. Wait a minute. Say that again so I can hear you.
That's exactly what he did, Mr. Fuller, this weekend. He made a train wreck and a outspoken statement condoning same-sex marriage. That is confusion. Pope Francis is a suspected white supremacist.
Okay, you came to your own conclusion because that's what the code is about. Everybody coming to their own conclusion.
That's what I'm doing.
So you're saying what you're saying.
Absolutely,
okay.
sir.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Everett. And lastly, right quick, let's go right here. You got about a minute. Lightning from Alabama. You only got a minute. Sorry about that, but go ahead.
Hey, Mr. Bobby, Mr. Fuller.
Yes, sir.
It's great to speak to you all. I've been listening to you a long time, and I really followed the code Mr. Fuller has put out. I had two questions, but the one most constructive for me would be, Mr. Fuller, could you talk about how do you, every day with all this going on, enable yourself to stay on code?
Oh, I'm off code most of the time because I'm trying to stay on code by inventing the code as I go along. Because the code is just whatever you do. So, and you try to get the most constructive results. That's all. I emphasize problem solving, but I also want to emphasize using the same words, really different words to say the same thing, constructive, non-constructive. That's staying on code. Anytime you do anything that's non-constructive, that's not code. Everything that you do is supposed to have a constructive result.
Got to leave it there. I am so sorry, Lightning. Call in the next time when we have more time. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
I will. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, callers. You were excellent today, all of you. Thank you.
Yes, they were.
Yeah, they were. Okay, so we'll try to do better the next time that we're on. You've been listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. So long for now.